Good morning, 39.6ers. It is Sunday, November 7th. It's episode 196. We're going to talk about this new book, Burn In, featuring Dr. Patrick Tran. This is a 39.6 Facebook and YouTube Live Finance show, the show that teaches high earners like yourselves how to make your money work for you so you don't have to work for your money. We talk general investing, taxes, real estate, syndications, Airbnb, paying for college, paying for childcare, and even the car you drive. It's been a minute. We're on episode 196. We have a special guest today, Dr. Patrick Tran, Mohs surgeon, releasing this book called Burn In, about burnout, financial independence, finding happiness and the worst things that life gives to you, and taking through his journey, going through through cancer care of his young child, something that's, of course, very, very near and dear to my heart, since that's what I do for a living. With no further ado, we'll bring in Dr. Patrick Tran.
Hey, everyone. Oh, wow.
Welcome.
You got sound effects and everything, huh?
This is a real live show. I don't have any, there's no backup here, and there's no post-editing.
You have the applause button, and then they're like, studio clap.
Exactly. Yeah, I should get like a live audience, like video that I bring in where people applaud. So here we are. Good morning. This is like Good Morning America. Actually, nothing like that. But you're coming live from California. So it is super early over there. So thanks for joining as early as it is.
Yeah.
Dr. Tran. So we have this awesome book, which I'm very much looking forward to reading, and at some point in the future listening to in the car. Hopefully, if there's an audio version at some subsequent period of time. But I'm excited about this book. It's set to be launched on November 15th, but available for pre-order right now. But just if you wouldn't mind, tell me a little bit about yourself, about your work, what you do as a physician before we jump into the book.
Sure. So I live in Modesto, California, which is Central Valley. Grew up in the Bay Area of California, and went to University of Michigan for medical school.
Oh, I didn't know you were a Wolverine.
Yeah, go blue.
All right, awesome.
I went to Cal for undergrad too, so I didn't have to switch colors from gold and blue to maize and blue. And then I initially matched into plastic and reconstructive surgery in Indianapolis, because I thought I wanted to be a burn surgeon, burn reconstructive surgeon. And then I switched fields to dermatology because I realized I wanted to do Mohs. So now I'm a Mohs micrographic surgeon, and I come from a family of doctors. My mother is an allergist, and she just retired from working at Kaiser for like 30 years. So she always tried to get me to work at Kaiser, but I always resisted because I have a different practice model.
Well, you grew up in California, right?
Yeah,
and
correct.
Kaiser is kind of the behemoth over there outside of the academic world. And she's put in her 30 years, right? So Kaiser, if nothing else, has a very good pension program, right?
Yeah, for sure. They call them golden handcuffs, right?
Oh yeah. They might be platinum handcuffs, right? Because I think for people outside of academia, I think that might honestly be the best pension out there, right? They get basically, what do they get, their full like annual salary going on forward, or like 80% of it or something like that?
I think it's based on your highest 3 earning years, and it's the percentage of that increases per year after your vesting period. And I think the VA system is very similar, except the VA doesn't go as high.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, she's done very well for herself.
Yeah, she put 30 years in, so she's probably getting basically around her top earnings year for effectively perpetuity, right?
Yeah, and she did well for herself because she's a refugee from the Vietnam War, right? So she came over in the 70s and didn't speak English, went to Cal State Long Beach for undergrad, worked her butt off, and then went to UCSF for medical school. So I have nothing but praise and honor for my mom.
That is awesome. Good for her. And so you went through the whole doctor pathway. Okay, you switched over from integrated plastics to derm. Did you do that right after your PGY 1 year directly into derm?
Yeah, so integrated plastics is cool because you shave some time off instead of doing like 5 to 7 years of gen surge and then applying to fellowship and then doing 3 years of plastics.
Yeah.
You're a plastic surgeon from the get-go.
Yeah.
And luckily, derm is an advanced match, so you do 1 year of whatever. Most people try to do like a cush transition year.
That would
Um,
be me.
yeah, and then 3 years of derm-specific residency. So I was lucky to be able to apply my plastics toward
Right.
towards derm, right? And I just lateraled over, didn't lose any time.
So you
Whereas
decided
the
pretty
person who took
early.
my spot was
Yeah.
like a gen surge who had to repeat PGY 2 year. So
Okay. Okay. So you decided early in your plastics career that that was not going to be your long-term plan.
yeah, I guess the thing that did it for me was I was in I was I was rotating through derm. So I'll tell you, I was always interested in derm, but in med school, honestly, my rotation was boring. Like they didn't let me do anything, and I just saw clinical derm and doing hospital runs for like stupid rashes, like people consulting on bilateral cellulitis. It was like stasis derm or whatever, and that didn't do it for me. Whereas in plastics, I was in the operating room. They let me suture, and I was like, "This is what I want to do. I want to change people's lives in like an hour or whatever." Um, and but when I got into plastics, and I thought I wanted to do burn reconstruction because I saw these cool burn cases where we do like Z-plasties and do scar contracture release. But when I got to the actual like burn operating room, it was a lot of acute care, and I didn't think about that. Um, I didn't want to be uh, doing those kind of cases. I wanted to be doing these nice little flaps and stuff, and
Right.
I had a like cognitive mismatch or whatever of my
Okay.
expectations and reality. So when I rotated through derm as a plastic surgery resident, then I did like Mohs rotation,
Mm-hmm.
and there I saw all the overlap of the plastics part, like the reconstructive surgery, and
Right.
then I also felt like I had way more control because another thing that scared me was complications.
Yeah.
And I think that in life, or as a physician, you should only do whatever procedures or things that you want to do so long as you can handle the complications.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to handle the complications caused by other people, like the
Yeah.
anesthesiologist intubating the wrong tube or, injecting local into like a nerve block directly into a vessel and causing
Right.
a seizure.
Yeah.
So, and I saw those things and it scared me a
Mm-hmm.
lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, I was part of they did this big study to compare duty hours. So I was not on the traditional duty hours restriction. I was like working overnights as an intern.
You are in the old system.
Yeah, I was in the old system. And I remember one week working like 100 and whatever hours, doing like 3 back-to-back 36-hour call shifts. Um, and it's like not sustainable, it's like
How could that not be sustainable? How could 36 hours contiguous not be sustainable for anything in life? But you know what though? You're looking back at it, that 1 year, you got to cram in a lot of plastic surgery into that 1 year, right? So you actually have you have a great foundation, surgically speaking, more so than maybe a lot of other people who end up on the dermatology pathway.
Yeah, so everything has two sides to it, I believe. So yeah, you can look at it one way where I was like, oh, it was a shitty intern year and I worked a lot. But also, yeah, I got more surgical training than most derms get in their entire residency. Like I did more cases as an intern and with more ownership and more challenging cases
Right.
than you would do in entire derm residency and
Right.
even most
What's
fellowship sometimes. The other
Yeah, and you
thing
didn't even do
is,
a gen surge year because as a gen surge intern, you're often not getting cases. You are actually in an integrative plastics program, so you actually got real case opportunities. That's
yeah,
good.
and so it made me a better doctor for sure.
Yeah.
And I also did things that like no human does. Like I retracted. We had a shared um, craniofacial case with neurosurgery, and we would do like craniosynostosis. So baby
Mhm.
skulls. There's like a fontanelle, But if they fuse, the suture lines fuse, then the skulls get all misshapen and stuff. So we work with, in plastics, we would work with the neurosurgeons and like literally crack the skull and like reshape it, reform it. So as an intern, I was holding like a metal retracting or like protecting brain as they like sawed through skull. Like, who does that? Like, and now I have a 2-year-old and I can't imagine like some intern asshole was like retracting his skull. Um, yeah, I've been very blessed and very privileged to touch a lot of parts of medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. So after you finished your derm residency, and was that over there at Indiana also?
No, what happened is derm's super competitive, like
Right.
plastics, right?
Well, so was plastics. I mean, you picked two of the most competitive training programs, right?
Yeah. So what happened was during the derm rotation, I put out some feelers to the derm folks, and there's a guy who wrote a famous textbook in Indiana named Steve Wolverton. He wrote an important pharmacology textbook, and he kind of I kind of let him know my interest, and he put out some feelers, and he would just let me know, like, hey, I support you. He wrote me a letter, and there was a couple of programs that opened up like residency spots that year. Like they got funding from the VA or whatever. So the two programs that opened up,
They
they
were like new program spots, like new slots. They weren't
new
like
slots, yeah,
everything.
they
Right.
existing programs, but new slots because of funding, right?
Right.
So normally
Like
GME,
expansion spots. All right.
exactly, and that only happens if you get money.
Yeah.
So
You
like
gotta be
the
really
V,
lucky.
yeah, yeah. Or if somebody drops out,
Right.
if
Right.
people drop out for whatever reason.
Right. Because they want to go to plastic surgery from dermatology.
Yeah, yeah. So we probably like crisscross wires. um, there's two that opened up. I think one was in Chicago. I don't remember the Chicago program. They both wanted to interview me. It was Chicago and Washington D.C. And that's where I ended up because D.C. offered it to me first, and I have some connections to the East Coast there.
Okay.
Um, so I was very lucky. I lateraled over into a spot at Howard in
Mhm.
Washington D.C.
Yep.
And that was through the benevolent funding through the VA. So I did a lot of my rotations over at the VA Medical Center there. And it was a great training program. Did a lot of skin of color, but also rotated like at Walter Reed. Did Mohs there. It was really cool to interact with all the local derm residents.
And then for fellowship, were you there too, or so that
No,
was
fellowship, I came home to California, so I did it in Mountain View. And
okay? All right.
yeah.
So take me through a Mohs fellowship. Like, how many cases are you doing? Just because I think a lot of people have no idea what actual training people have, especially in this day and age when people who are non-doctors are effectively practicing as them. As somebody who's not only a board certified dermatologist, but also a Mohs fellowship trained dermatologist, how many cases are you going to do? How many surgical oncologic surgeries do you think you go through?
Yeah, so I think the math really depends on where you are and where you
Mhm.
train. So where I trained, I did like 22 cases on a Monday and like a little bit more on the next day or whatever. And then I also had this like great training in cosmetics. So we would do facelifts, like full face ablative CO2 lasers, liposuction, which you do not get at a lot of academic programs. So I don't know, let's just say that's like 22 plus 15 times like 40. So I probably did like close to, between 1,500 and 2,000 cases of just Mohs, and then plus whatever handful of, not handful, like a lot of cosmetics too. And I think that the minimum is like 500
Yeah.
to be,
Yeah.
yeah. So
2,000 cases of which, I mean, if somebody is a dermatology resident, let's just say, you're going to have rotations in Mohs, right? Or doing similar types, at least for a portion of your training.
mhm.
Is that how much do you think a dermatology trained resident would get in terms of that exposure?
Yeah, I think it really depends where you are also because some programs don't even have a Mohs program
Right.
like
Okay.
native to them, right? So I think they go and rotate in private practice or whatever. Um, but I'll tell you where I trained, they would do 3 Mohs cases like in a day,
Right.
and
And you'll
they
do
would
that
offer,
many in an hour.
yeah, something like that. We start them in an hour. It takes like 20 minutes to process the tissue, but yeah, probably I could I could do them very quickly.
Wow. Okay. That's incredible. And so you're still practicing right now.
Correct. Yeah. I used to be all about like, I was like, since I have an entrepreneurial spirit, I was thinking all these things like, oh, I want to start my own practice. I want to have my own business. I want to have all these side gigs or whatever, and exit clinical medicine. I used to think that.
Mhm.
And then with going through my son's cancer journey.
Oh, let's
he-
let's
okay,
just kind of go through that. So you've been working as a fellowship as a Mohs surgeon for a number of years,
yeah.
and then kind of walk me through what happened, because the beginning, at least in my experience, for most families with a new pediatric cancer diagnosis, that is the part from initial diagnosis until you actually know what you're doing and start treatment can be the biggest roller coaster. And then once you're kind of on a path, then you kind of settle into something you feel more comfortable with. But that beginning can be the complete blow to the head. Can you tell me kind of what happened, how this was found, and what transpired?
Yeah. So we were just like living our lives, right? I was Mohs surgeon. My wife was like staying at home with our new little one, and and one day she told me like she thought something was. My wife told me she thought something was wrong. She was like, you know, honey, I'm feeding Adrian all of this like peanut butter and olive oil and all these things to try to get him to gain weight because he's always been kind of a skinny kid and he was like third or fifth on his weight curve.
Yeah, that's all of our three children, or at least
Mhm.
the two older ones. So yeah, I can feel you there.
Yeah,
Get
and
any
and
amount of
and
calories
then
into them.
she was like, I think there's like a blockage or something. And at me, at having trained in like surgery or whatever, I was like, what? There's no way there's a blockage. Like he's pooping, he's farting, like passing gas. There's no intestinal obstruction, right?
All right.
And then also he's such a happy-go-lucky kid. Like he's smiling, laughing, playing, no pain, no fever, no symptoms, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of how it like the first week I came home that she mentioned something, and then like fast forward another week, she's like, hey honey, you got to like really take a look at this, because she had just given him a bath, and then she lifts up his shirt,
Mhm.
and like it's totally obvious clinically, like there's an asymmetry in his abdomen, like
Right.
the left side is bigger than the right.
This is, you know what? This is literally how virtually every Wilms tumor patient I see, because they tend to be pretty healthy kids, but and it's often a parent, but also often like a different person who's taking care of the kid, like a babysitter or a nanny or the grandparent who, because you don't see the child every single day, you notice something that you otherwise, it's very easy to not notice things that, are very gradual. But this is a very common presentation. Okay, so you found this asymmetry, and then
And then we did like a video visit because it was during COVID,
right.
and we had him brought in right away for an X-ray, and he had a huge kidney tumor. I mean, it was just like crossing midline, expanding against his other organs.
Mhm.
And it was like 14 centimeters, and baby,
And a 2-year-old is very, very large.
2-year-old kidney should be like, I don't know, like
Yeah, a few
like
centimeters.
a third. Yeah.
Okay.
And so everything pointed to Wilms tumor, right? It's like
Right.
most common pediatric abdominal tumor.
Yeah.
And I learned about it in medical school. I was like, okay,
Right.
okay, we can handle this. We'll just cut it out. Hopefully the surgeon can get it out in one piece. Hopefully it stays stage 2. And then it's like a very simple relative regimen, like no radiation, like vincristine, like very easy regimen.
All right. No doxorubicin.
Yeah.
Pretty, and cure rates are like nearly 100%. So
Yeah. So the biggest win was getting the tumor out. So that was, I think as a surgeon, I was not really understanding the gravity of like giving a loved one away to somebody to like cut on, right?
Mhm.
So it's not that I was doing a bad job as a surgeon before. Like I was still doing great surgeries, but now I have a lot more compassion for those people who are bringing their mom or their son or whatever, and they're like, hey, please take care of a family member, and the like surrender and release of control is incredible. And as a doctor, like you're like the worst parent and patient, right? So you're like, okay, how many cases have you done, whatever. uh, uh, but at the end of the day, like, you can't really, um, there's no guarantees in medicine and in life. So it is a letting go to allow someone else to, because like honestly, I want to do the surgery, right? I'm not a fucking pediatric surgeon, but
You wanted to check every margin as it was getting.
yeah, I want to check the margins. I wanted to suture it, but actually he did a really great job suturing it, and he got it en bloc, so it was
Right.
remained
That's the
stage
key. You have
2.
to do it all on block, which means you're not doing a laparoscopic procedure for these cases.
Yeah.
When I do my mock oral exams, I'm like, so you want to do this laparoscopically, right? Because you want to help minimize the morbidity of this young kid. And you'll feel the boards if you say that.
Yeah,
No.
it's a huge, like, across the abdomen incision.
Right.
That's what's necessary. You
Yeah.
don't want to like seed tumor or whatever.
Exactly. So everybody's expecting this to be a Wilms tumor. And I mean, lottery as it is, somebody is going to get these 1 in like 5 million odds diagnoses. Unbelievably rare clear cell sarcoma of the kidney, right? So the final diagnosis.
Correct. So the week after, the oncologist comes in, sits us down, says, sorry, we're expecting Wilms tumor, but it's actually clear cell sarcoma of the kidney. Now, it's bad when I'm a doctor and I haven't heard of the disease, right? Like, it's so rare. There are 14 children in all of the U.S. and Canada diagnosed with this condition in a year on average over the last 14 years, according to the COG, protocol. Yeah. And there's 25 million kids under the age of 5, which is usually when it shows up. So less than 1 in a million for sure.
Yeah. No, I've honestly, I can only think of one that I've treated in the past 3 years. I think I might have treated 2 in total. And I treat more pediatric cancers than most all other people. So yeah, these are incredibly rare. And yes, I have to look them up every time, the couple of times I've seen them. So, but fortunately, one of the good things that Children's Oncology Group did is back when they started these Wilms tumor protocols, or at least at some point they included clear cell sarcoma of the kidney diagnoses, even though they are a completely different tumor, but at least they enrolled them on the studies so that we could get some information to help us know how to treat them. Because unfortunately, a lot of rare tumors, they don't have any protocols because they're so rare. And we literally have no idea what the right treatments are. We just kind of make them up. So fortunately, we have regimens that we have some data for. And so he went forward with, he had flank radiation.
Yeah, he had regimen I. So CCSK,
he had radiation first, right? Before the chemo?
Correct, yeah. So so post-op, he had adjuvant radiation left to his flank, and then chemo right after that.
Right, okay. All right. Do you remember if that was about a week of radiation or about?
Yeah, it was about a week.
Yeah, okay. 10 gray. Okay, 10.8 gray, probably. Okay. And then chemo. And then how long was the chemo course?
So we started, his first diagnosis was in February, and we just finished like a couple weeks ago in October. Hey, I'm at an interview.
So February 2021?
February 2021, and then finished October 2021.
Okay.
With most kids, I think, have substantial delays during it because it's a serious regimen. It's doxorubicin, etoposide, vincristine. He had Zinacart to protect him a little bit from the doxo. Cyclophosphamide. I think that's it. But
it's an aggressive regimen. Absolutely. So he was diagnosed in January?
No, it was like mid to late February was when he was diagnosed.
Okay, so we're going through, it's all done within this calendar year.
Yep, correct.
All right, and the last day of chemo was?
It was mid or late October. It was early October.
Okay, so about
September. Actually, okay. I take it back. Sorry, I'm like so horrible with dates. But I think it was like the last week of September.
All right, so you're about a month out now, having gone through all that, and he's finally gone through a cycle of time without more chemo.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Because he was getting it like every couple of weeks. Is going to the hospital. Like it doesn't quite hit you until you get to that point where you don't actually have to go back in when you otherwise would have. And then it's like,
I mean, it's like it's like a breath of fresh air or a big sigh of relief. Um, Starting off, it's weekly chemo, right? Because the vincristine's once a week,
Yeah.
and then the harder regimens, like with the cyclophosphamide or the doxo, they're every 3 or 4 weeks. So vincristine's not like the worst chemo. I don't.
Yeah.
Vincristine's like
Increasing tends to be
15-minute
pretty easy.
infusion. It's like no big deal.
Yeah.
But a lot of kids get like foot drop and stuff. And then the big ones are like the cyclophosphamide for 5 days in a row or
Yeah.
whatever. And then the week after, he was just like, immune system's trash. He doesn't feel good. And in fact, every time he had a big regimen, he was basically admitted, except for like 1 or 2 cycles at the end. But he would be admitted for like fever with neutropenia or fever with pancytopenia. So he'd have to be like transfused, platelets, blood products. It was a tough time for sure.
And I mean, going through all of this while you're still working, right? Through most of all of his treatment, and it's very time intensive to. I mean, the amount of time you're in the clinics with the oncologists and the hospitals. How did you guys manage to do all of this?
Yeah, sorry. I don't know what's going on. Can you see me anymore? Probably not, right?
I can't see you right now.
Yeah, something happens with my,
okay, you're back.
Something happens with my camera. It like shuts off after
okay.
X amount of time. Anyway, so what was the question again?
Yeah, so how did you manage? I mean, like I think about these things not every day, but routinely, because I mean, I take care of kids with cancer. I'm like, what if one of our 3 children had a cancer diagnosis? How would we logistically manage going through all the treatment? Obviously, we would make it happen, but you know, you have 2, like we both work a lot, and you're working full time as a Mohs surgeon. How did you balance and make all these appointments? How did you take care of him?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate since I've done well for myself. So my wife stays at home, and she became like his #1 caregiver. So she would be responsible for taking him to the hospital appointments and clinic appointments, and she would stay with him during those substantial hospitalizations. And I'm fortunate as a Mohs surgeon that I put in a lot of work up front, and now I have like a great specialty. So I'm not like, the surgeries that I do, they're quick and relatively quick, and then I don't get called a lot in the middle of the night. So I maybe get called a handful of times throughout a year. Um, and I only work like 4 days a week, and I have a fairly flexible schedule. So depending on the time of his hospitalization, I would just like drive over to where he's getting treatment and like stay the night with them over the weekend or whatever. And
Was that pretty far from where you live, where he had to go for?
It's like 100 miles or maybe.
Oh, that's far.
Yeah, so we live in Modesto, which is like an hour and a half inland of San Francisco Bay Area, and they don't really have or I have like my insurance through Kaiser, so they didn't have like a quote center for excellence or whatever near us. We have to go to either Roseville, which is near Sacramento, or Oakland. And of course, my mother was chief of allergy at Oakland for a long time, and has all the hookups there. So.
But when he'd be going there for a week, I mean, or a handful of days, that's not home. Like they're away from home for this treatment.
Yeah, that's correct. So I would always do my best to be there with him when I could. It was like very unpredictable. So you can't like. Yeah, when he's admitted for fever with neutropenia or whatever, like you don't know how long the admission's going to be. You don't know when he's going to be admitted. So it's a lot like you always have a suitcase ready and packed. And then the moment he's starting to like have some clinical signs, you like become wary. And then as soon as he's like 101.5, you're like, okay, we got to go. Or if he's like rising there, you got to go. Right. So my wife, who has no medical background yet, was the one who kind of brought the issue to attention. Mm-hmm. She had to basically learn to be his nurse.
Oh, and, no, you learn very fast. All sorts of things that most doctors have no idea about, frankly.
Yeah. So she had to learn how to do like NG tube feeds and give him his medicines and like measure everything. I would have just used jargon. I'd be like, oh yeah, just give him BID or whatever. She's like, I don't know what that means.
So that's so you made it through this whole journey, and in the process, I think a lot of people had say, "Well, I'm going to write a book," but you actually wrote a book.
Yeah. So I had been thinking about writing a book for a while. And actually, this is not the first book that I've written. I wrote another book on like solving Rubik's cubes because I came up with like a method to solve Rubik's cube.
Dude, how come we did not get to talk about this before? I didn't know that you were a Rubik's cube junkie.
Yeah,
you can do it one-handed? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
can you do it? But can you do it with two hands at the same time? Two cubes.
I could probably do it, but it would be like pretty slow.
Wow. So did you used to compete?
I used to compete, yeah. So I went to Berkeley for undergrad, and I became like a speed cuber when I was at Berkeley, and it was a big part of my life for a couple of years.
Speed cuber, like totally trending on Twitter, right? So do you have one of those timer mats, like?
Yeah, those mats are actually, they're stack mat timers. They come from cup stacking. So I don't know if you've ever seen that, but they take like solo cups and they like stack them up into like pyramids and stuff, and then they like have to stop with both hands on the timer.
Okay, so is this like chess? Is there a rating system for speed cubing?
It's
Are you like an international master?
The same way that like racing would be like on a track, right? It's just whoever's the fastest. And then what they do is when you average, you solve 5 cubes, and then you take the average of like the middle 3, so you cut off the fastest, slowest times.
Yeah, it's like the old figure skating like rankings. You get take off the worst and the best, the Russian judge and the Canadian judge, right? And then you take the average of everybody else, and that's your score. Okay, so what's your average then?
My competition average is like 16 seconds.
When you're at your peak state. Yeah,
peak state. Peak state probably was in the like 12s, 13s. But in competition, like officially, it's like 16. And then fastest like single solve time, I think, was like 12 or 13, whatever.
It's crazy. And do they have categories for like one hand versus two hand?
Yeah. So one-handed solving is a little bit slower, but you'd be impressed. Like people are super fast. My friend Jeremy, I think he set the like North American record at like 11 seconds on one-handed solving. And I was around a lot of like world record holders.
Well, yeah. Once you get to that level, I mean, you're around people who they're like, oh, you're 13 seconds, and
yeah, they're like, it's nothing. You're scum to me.
I'll eat for breakfast.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So you wrote a book on your own method that was different from other methods, or had you basically taken methods that you'd figured out and kind of turned that into a book?
It's my own method. So I used to teach at Berkeley, actually, and then I taught like a beginner course and the intermediate advanced course. But we taught a method that like we just passed down, kind of like in medicine, just like learn whatever people taught you. But then
wait, what do you mean you taught at Berkeley? What did you teach there?
It was we called it it was Math 98 and 198, and so they were like.
So you were teaching in the undergraduate program?
In the undergraduate program, yeah.
Were you like a master's student there at the time?
No, I was an undergrad, but we have these things called decals, which stands for Democratic Education at Cal.
Oh, okay. Like these are like side gig classes that people can. Like right. Yeah, we had like they were like half a credit, and they were like for fun.
Exactly. It's so the way I got into it is I needed an extra unit to like.
Right. Yes. We call those house courses at Duke, and you get like it was basically like a quarter of a credit, but they were fun. You could make it or you could take one, and one of them was like wine tasting, and I took sign language. And okay, so you taught a class on cubing.
Yeah.
Of course.
I was a undergrad. I was like a graduate student instructor for chemistry too. Like my second semester, I did really well or was it second year? My second year, I had done really well as an undergrad, like A+ student or whatever. Right. And then they had these positions where you could like teach lab, and then you get great benefits in the union. So like
even as an undergrad, they would let you teach.
As an undergrad, they hired me, and so I had my tuition reimbursed.
Wow.
And I got a stipend, like a graduate student stipend, which is amazing for an undergrad. Like I was just a sophomore,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah, I loved chemistry. I was a chemistry minor. I think like many medical students were, but I loved chemistry and orgo. And I tutored orgo for a number of years and taught Kaplan.
Oh yeah,
So
I taught Kaplan too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no,
99 percentile MCAT.
exactly. I mean, I could, I miss teaching. But I love teaching organic chemistry. I guess I could still teach the whole course. I think pretty much right now. Because
Yeah,
once, I mean, if you're a cuber, like you can visualize all this stuff, right? It's not like it's all there.
yeah.
Um,
You could be
I
like the guy in Breaking Bad.
I actually unfortunately haven't seen this.
Oh,
So,
really?
how about pi? How many digits of pi do you know?
Hmm. I've never been a memorizer of
Oh,
digits and stuff. My
really?
brother was, so he was probably like 30, 40 digits in or something, but
Oh.
I'm like not into that.
I'm
I'm
into
into
just
memory
speed
techniques.
cubing. I'm just into like one-handed speed cubing. I'm not, yeah, I'm not into like pi and irrational numbers. Um, okay, I think we're losing all of our audience here.
Yeah, probably.
But okay, I'll look up your cubing book. But it's funny because one of the first books that I remember, I don't know, I think my brother bought it from like a book sale at the church um, was How to Solve a Rubik's Cube. It's like in the 80s, and then he did that, and I was like a really young kid, so I couldn't do it yet. But when I was older, yeah, I kind of got into it, but not competitively. Rubik's Cube is just awesome. It's a timeless thing. Okay, so we're talking about your book here. Okay, so you decided to write. You wrote a book before about cubing, and now you're writing your second book. So for all the people who were subscribed to you as an author before, now they know about your new book. You got all these speed cubers who are going to be like, "Oh, Dr. Tran's new book, completely unrelated to cubing, called Burn In." Okay, and take me through this book.
Yeah, so in the book, we basically go through my son's cancer journey, talking about some of the mindset shifts that I had during this process. Because, of course, like as any new parent with a horrible diagnosis for their child, I was asking all the wrong questions and saying, why him? Why us? We were really devastated. We were crying and fighting, losing sleep. And keep in mind, Adrian's trying to heal through this, right? Uh, that's not the conducive environment for healing for a young child. And it wasn't until I had been doing a lot of like mindset prep work, foundational reading, and other things to try to kind of live in a beautiful state at all times. And it wasn't until I had hired a coach who reminded me, like, hey, Patrick, you got to take 100% responsibility for your life, that things started to shift. And, you know, um, around the time that I had, that Adrian was like first hospitalized, I told my friends I was going to go to this big event that I had to cancel. Um, and everyone, there's a lot of love and outpouring support from loved ones, family, friends, even strangers. One of them was a dermatologist named Chong, and he reminded me of the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And in the book, Napoleon's son Blair is born like without the ability to hear. And the doctors tell him he's never going to hear, he's going to be deaf for life. And Napoleon gave a prime example of taking 100% ownership of his life. And he just ignored the doctors. He said, I'm not going to believe that. I believe in my heart of hearts, that my son Blair will hear. And in fact, one day he did, through training and then like development of this like massoid conduction technology or whatever. His son actually learned to hear when everyone else told him that that would not be a possibility. And I realized in my own life that a lot of the limitations that I had were just mental constructs and stories I was telling myself. And rather than asking questions that are unanswerable, like why him, why us, why me, rather than asking questions from a place of victimhood and no control, I was able to shift to a point where I stepped into my potential, stepped into who I really am. And I thought, yeah, I didn't order Adrian's cancer on Amazon Prime, like it just showed up on the doorstep. But given that it's here, what am I going to do with it?
You can't return it.
Can't
Can't drop it
return
off
it.
at Whole Foods.
Despite the great policy,
Yeah, yeah.
can't return it. probably too many ththings I returned.
You got black box from not Dr. Tran. He's done. No more refunds for him. So okay.
And so I realized like these lessons are important, and I wish I had them when I was a resident. Because another time that I talk about in the book is a dark time during my plastic surgery intern year, when I thought, you know what, wouldn't it be nice if I could just escape all of this? And I thought about like jumping off the top of a parking structure. And I've never had like major depressive disorder or anything like that. But mental health is like a real thing in medicine, and it's like swept under the rug, and people feel like they don't have any control. They feel like burned out, and they feel stuck and trapped. And I don't know that I would have like stayed in plastic surgery if I had this book or these mindset things, but I wanted to give a sense of like hope and possibility for my other colleagues who have been feeling burnt out or feel pushed around by whatever it is, like insurance not paying you enough, your boss not paying you enough, whatever. No matter what pain is brought into your life, there's always a path back to joy. And your son may not have cancer, but you will struggle. You will have pain in your life. And the question is, when you have that, what are you going to do about it? And that's kind of what the crux of the book is.
That's amazing. So did you find this coach during the process, or had you already had the coach prior and then kind of more coaching during the process?
I had already had the coach prior. Basically, in the beginning of the, end of the previous year, like 2020, I had started getting into like mastermind communities and coaching programs and stuff. So
this is different from Rubik's Cube, by the way.
Yeah, different from Rubik's Cube. Although there is a mastermind for speed cubers. Anyway, I had gotten into like real estate investing pretty heavily, and hang around like really high net worth, high level people. And I looked around and I was like, these people are doing amazing things that as a doctor, like you don't see that much, right? So numbers sound big to you. If you're like 6-figure multiple salaries, you're like, oh, that's great for a specialist. And then you go and you see these real estate people who are crushing it and they're making like 6 figures a month. And it made me realize, like, okay, you're I don't remember who said it, maybe Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, but it's like probably Jim Rohn. I think it was, your net worth is your network, right? So you're basically the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So in any category, like your health, your wealth, your happiness. And so if you want to level up the game that you're playing, you should level up the people that you're around. And part of that, I realized that the people that I'm around, they all have coaches, and I realized I needed to hire a coach in my life. And so that's how I got into coaching. Somebody told me about it, and I had great results. And then I also had great insights, because a lot of these coaching programs, they come from something else, right? So Tony Robbins is a great guy. I love Tony Robbins. He's like I consider him like a mentor. But a lot of his frameworks, they come from other people, right? So I think when he started, he used like neuro-linguistic programming, and then he put his spin on it, and then it's like Tony Robbins' program, right?
Right.
I think your wife did Brooke Castillo's program, right? The life coach school. So Brooke Castillo is really awesome, and she's produced great coaches. But one of her frameworks I found in another book, right? So her framework is like CTFAR, right? Like think, circumstance,
thoughts, feelings.
Yeah. That's from T. Harv Ekker's Secrets of Millionaire Mind, right? So he says thoughts, it's like TFAR. So it's like thoughts create feelings, actions, whatever. And so all of these coaches that I'd seen around, and even the coach that I hired, the things that I liked, they were frameworks that came, they have a tradition from somewhere else. And at the end of the day, all of those things lead back to you as the individual, right? And a great coach, I think, is like a mirror, and they shine back to you what you look like and show you your blind spots. But at the end of the day, only you can hold yourself accountable. Only you can make make the necessary changes to get the results that you want.
Right. Yeah. You can only change yourself. And that's something that, a lot of ways in medicine, we think that we can control a lot of things. and then you actually practice medicine, you realize you have almost no control over anything. But you do have 100% control of yourself. And it really comes down to that. And it's interesting what happens once you change the way you do things. Then other people end up changing around you. It's an incredible thing. So even though, we might think that we could change others, the best way to change others is to change yourself first.
Yeah.
And how we are with others. So that's great. So then when you have this diagnosis and you take 100% accountability, what did you change? What do you think you changed in your life going through the diagnosis? How is your life different now versus what it was then? Or how are your thoughts different now versus a year ago?
Well, I think there are like so many changes, but one of them is, I think we all have the deepest fear that we carry with us is that we're not worthy, we're not enough, right? And along with that, you have all this negative self-talk that runs in your head all the time, like, I have this fear, I have that anxiety, I think, I have imposter syndrome, whatever. And you talk to yourself in like a really horrible way. I don't know about you, but like, I definitely had a lot of negative self-talk, thinking I couldn't do things or I shouldn't do things or whatever. And I realized a lot of the stuff I wouldn't tell to like a patient. I wouldn't talk to somebody else that way. And so why do I talk to me that way, right? And so now I take more time to acknowledge like the great things that I've done. I take more time to reflect on things that I'm grateful for. And I always ask if I'm feeling some type of way, right? Anxious, fearful, doubtful, whatever. I ask myself why I'm feeling that way. I check in emotionally and I say, what is the underlying thought behind this? Is that really true? And in fact, most of the time it's not. It's just like a story that you tell yourself. And so the more you can shed these layers of stuff that you've picked up from just like random things like childhood, you watched it in a movie, whatever, and then you ask like the fundamental question, is this true? You can break away from the hallucination that you've created.
That's great. So your book is being released November 15th. Is that when it's available to everybody? How do people get a hold of this awesome book?
Yeah, so Burn In is going to be released on Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble. You can pre-order now, but nobody pre-orders books, I think. What I want to do is give the book away for free to the communities that I'm a part of, like 39.6 community, my other doctor friends and family on Facebook. So I'll send out a link later where you can get a free copy. And then before the official launch, I'll release the ebook for like 99 cents. So it's like $1. And I'll just ask that you buy it for $1 and then like write a review. So you got to kind of like click through the ebook, even if you've already read it, so that it like works for the program or Amazon
for the algorithms
and yeah. So then, if you like the book or if you don't like the book, whatever, just give me whatever you want, but buy the book, review it. And then November 15th, you should have access to like the, I think the physical copies. Physical copies will just be retail. I think it's like $12.95 or something. And it's a pretty book. Like the cover is cool. I have some illustrations in there. It's like nice cream colored pages. So,
any Rubik's cubes in there?
I don't think there's any Rubik's cubes, but yeah, I should have. I'll tell you about the Rubik's Cube book too.
We'll look you up on Amazon, and you'll have Patrick Tran's 2 books there. So that's exciting, and I have absolutely zero affiliation. So just putting that out there, but absolutely happy to support what I think is a very important message to get across to people, physicians, and anybody, even parents of children. Just because the content is not content we can really find. There aren't many people that have really gone through this journey. So I really appreciate you putting those thoughts down onto paper for the rest of us. So we'll look forward to it. Feel free to post the link when it's available. And yeah, if people if you put the reviews in there, I'll tell you from at least from our Airbnb experience. Getting those reviews makes a huge difference. Algorithms like it, help other people find it, and I look forward to it. Patrick, anything else you wanted to share? Is there anywhere people can find you otherwise besides purchasing the book?
Yeah, so my website is burnin.com for the book.
So that's BURIN with a hyphen?
No hyphen, just
no
burn
hyphen.
in.
So like
burning without the G.
Got it.
Yep. So that's the book website. My personal website is Dr. Patrick Tran. That's Dr. Patrick PatrickTran.com. And those are the ways to find me. My Instagram, like all my social media handles, are at Dr. Patrick Tran.
You're the only at Dr. Patrick Tran. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Studio clap. And we also have a laugh track, I think. But I don't know which one that one is. All right. Enjoy your Sunday. Thanks for joining us. And this will be posted in the group and on YouTube. We really record this for the replays. So hopefully people find this, and I look forward to the copy. All right.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, dude. I'll give me your address. I'll send you a copy.
Thank you.